This video is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com and GatheringMagic.com, your place to explore the game.
Hi, I'm Steven, and this is Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre. So this is Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre. He is one of the biggest commanders you can play. He's not the biggest, but he's a big boy for sure. He costs 11. So that's the big handicap in playing a commander like this, is you gotta get all the way up there. He is colorless, so everything in the deck is colorless, which is part of the fun of him. The reason I went with Ulamog over Kozilek or any of the other ones is because he's indestructible. Indestructible is, I find, the best way to keep your commander on the board. So he's a 10-10 for 11, which means he's one shy of knocking someone out in 2 hits. There's a couple ways of pumping him up a little bit. He's kind of my version of a Voltron general. The whole idea of the deck really is just to play him out and then get sideways with Ulamog. Annihilator 4 is what really puts people under. When you attack somebody twice with an Eldrazi like that, that's pretty much all it takes to finish him off. So let's get into it. First is my mana base. These are all of my lands that can tap for more than 1 mana. Mage-Ring Network is the newest storage land. Really glad they made this finally. Seemed like it was a long time coming. Eldrazi Temple taps for 2 for every Eldrazi spell. Crystal Vein, you could sack it for 2. So this mana, again, we're trying to get to 11. So sometimes I just stretch all the way out. There's ways of just kind of going all in Eldrazi. And Crystal Vein is one of the ways it's for sure 2. One of the lands you'll notice is missing here, or some of the lands, is all the Urza lands. I find that they just don't get there enough for me, so I took them out for Crystal Vein and other lands like this. Temple of the False God, taps for 2 when you have 5 or more. This is one of the new lands, Shrine of the Forsaken Gods. It taps for 2 if you have 7 or more lands. Other than that, it taps for 1. So kind of like the other Temple of the False Gods. Right now, we haven't had the actual set drop, the new Battle for Zendikar, so I'm kind of between the pre-release and the set dropping, so I've gotten some of the new stuff, but not everything we're going to add into it. But that's one of the new pickups. Ancient Tomb, taps for 2, deals 2 to you. Seems like a fair trade. Scorched Ruins is the best of the one single land that can tap for more than 1 color. You have to sacrifice 2 untapped lands, and then it taps for 4 colorless. So just huge advantage, huge value out of the Scorched Ruins. One of the best cards to pair it with is Deserted Temple. You can use 1 untapped target land, so you untap it, and these 2 give you 7 together. So when you're doing that, you'll get to Ulamog mana pretty quick. There's Cloudpost, comes into play tapped. You add each or mana for each Lotus or Locust you control. The other Locust is Glimmerpost, gives you a life for each of them. And then of course you can copy it with Vesuva. And Thespian Stage. Thespian Stage also is great as a Scorched Ruins, because then you don't have to sacrifice drawback. And then you got 2 lands tapping for 8, which is ridiculous. Here are some of the man lands. Inkmoth Nexus with Infect. So there's one really great way of pumping that up and going all out Infect. So this is kind of a surprise out of nowhere win shot. But even in the lands that can wake up into creatures, you can sack them for mana with some of the other cards. So these you can kind of go all in to Eldrazi. Mishra's Factory, another good man land. Mutavault. Dread, Statuary. Becomes a 4/2 artifact golem creature, and it stays a land when you pay 4 into it. Something like Stalking Stone permanently becomes a 3/3 artifact creature. So these are great for taking out planeswalkers after the board gets wiped out or something. Wake one up and go smack that guy. Here are some creatures, or some lands that make creatures. Springjack Pasture gives you a goat. Best part about that is just a skull clamps in here, so having a little chump guy so you can feed into the bigger stuff is always important. Urza's Factory will get you going on 2/2s. And then some lands that destroy other lands. There's an Encroaching Wastes, Strip Mine, Wasteland, and Dust Bowl. Now with these lands, you don't really want to start cracking them and taking out other lands until you've got enough to drop Ulamog. But then once you have Ulamog, what's fun is you just sacrifice all these lands and just take out all their important lands, and then Ulamog attacks. So it's really like Annihilator 7 after he gets dropped. And you've got enough of those on the board. Here are some utility lands that do certain things. Petrified Field, you can sack it to return land from your graveyard to your hand. So just kind of toolboxes all the lands that end up in your graveyard throughout the game. Buried Rune is an all-star here. It's going to grab any artifact from your graveyard back to your hand, so tons of great ones of those. Spawning Bed's also new. You can sack it to put 3 colorless Eldrazi Scion tokens. So when you get to 6, sack it, and then gives you 3 more to bump you up all the way. Winding Canyon is awesome. For 2, you can give creatures flash, pretty much. So drop in Ulamog instant speed or any of the Eldrazi instant speed is really great. I like thinking of them jumping out of a canyon too to get somebody. It's always fun. Phyrexian Core, you can sacrifice an artifact to gain a life. So good way of getting rid of artifacts when you need to. Tomb of the Spirit Dragon, you can pay 2 and gain 1 life for each colorless creature you control. It's not a lot of life getting in this deck. This is kind of one of the ways you can build up a little bit. There's plenty of ways of making tokens in the deck. Most of them are colorless artifact tokens, so you can kind of slowly rebuild and stabilize with Tomb if you need to. Makokuru, Center of the Sea, draws a card for each player, so when you're gassing out, you can just keep going. Rogue's Passage will give your Ulamog unblockable, which is very important. If they have just too many guys on the board, if they have way too much to feed into Annihilator, unblockable is very important. And then these are some of the lands that mess with your opponent's stuff. Arcane Lighthouse. You can remove Hexproof and Shroud from your opponent's creatures, which is great when you need to cast Ulamog to destroy a permanent. Make sure you can target it. Blinkmoth Well can tap target non-creature artifact. So when they just dropped their Gilded Lotus, you can on their upkeep tap it, and that way they're not up to 8 mana, they're still at 5 or whatever. Or you can just mess with other artifacts. You have so much artifacts, it's kind of nice being the artifact dominant player out there. Just another way you can mess with their stuff. Along the same lines is Rishadan Port. This card is so good in the opening hand, if you have it on your first 7. Because a lot of times in those first turns, you're not doing anything. You need to get up to big mana to really start generating artifacts. So with Port, you can tap their important land, tap their dual land, whatever it is, and you can kind of time walk through their early turns and just really mess up early game for them, which is great because you have to get to your late game to win with this. Tower of the Magistrate, target creature gains protection from artifacts until end of turn. So you can have anybody drop their equipment just by paying 1 and tapping it. So you can shut off other Voltron strategies, you can protect your general if you need to from artifacts. But mainly it's to make people drop equipment. It's just funny when they have to do that. Homeward Path. This one's so good because they're going to come copying or stealing, mainly stealing. They're going to come try to grab all your Eldrazi's, so just tapping it and you get all your guys back, and they kind of don't ever expect it because it's in your pile of 10 other lands. So Homeward Path is a must. Desert does a damage to attacking creature at the end of combat, so you can ping little guys, it's a threat. If you got Deserted Temple, you can untap it and hit somebody for 2. Just another little kind of rattlesnake. High Market, sack a creature. This is like one of the ones I'll leave up if I cast Ulamog and I have any mana left over. That way I can sack him in case he is getting stolen, or they do try to copy him, or if I want to just get rid of him and cast him again to destroy another permanent. High Market's very valuable. Sanctum of Ugin, this is another new one. Taps for a mana, and whenever you cast a colorless creature spell, you can sacrifice it and search for converted mana cost. You have to cast a spell of 7 or greater, then you can sack it for any colorless creature. So go get any of the Eldrazi when you cast another one of the big Eldrazi. Haven't really got a chance to use it yet, but it looks great. Darksteel Citadel is an artifact, is indestructible, that's very important. These are kind of lands that just tap for 1, but this one being an artifact, there's some other cards that kind of combo in with it later on, you'll see those. Urborg is in there. Again, Urborg doesn't have a black mana symbol on it, so you can play it. And it makes all your lands be able to tap for just 1 colorless, which is great for, say, Ancient Tomb. You don't want to take the damage. Other cards in here, like Maze of Ith, you can tap them for a mana if you need to. So it just kind of rounds out your land. Cathedral of War is one of the great ways of making Ulamog a 2-hitter. So it comes to play tapped, but it gives you Exalted. So if you're just swinging with Ulamog, and usually that's all you're going to need to swing with, makes them 11/11. That way you can finish somebody off in just 2 hits. Then there's Mystifying Maze, exiles an attacking creature and opponent controls. So just a good maze effect, protects you. Maze of Ith, even better. Good to have an Urborg out there, that way you can tap it for mana too. But best defense. And then there is Eye of Ugin, probably the best land in the deck. Eldrazi's cost 2 less, and then you can pay 7 to go search for any colorless creature, reveal it, and put it into your hand. So go get any Eldrazi and just keep the generation going. And this with Urborg is of course great. Taps for punch 3 off any Eldrazi, which is so good. And then when you get into 11, you have to play a lot of mana ramp. So this is kind of the mana ramp package, starting with Overflowing Chalice. I always want to get this more than one if I can. Try to get it 2 or 3, because you really need to sink in mana into it to get the mana back. Soul Ring, of course, Mana Vault, Mana Kin, just a little dork taps for mana. Grim Monolith. Unstable Obelisk, this one's great because you can pay 7 to destroy a permanent later on. So this is one of those ones that after you cast Ulamog, the next turn when you untap with all your mean lands, this is one of the things you'll topple over to destroy something, and you just kind of rush all those destruction lands and all the destruction artifacts out at once after you have your general on the board. Basalt Monolith adds 3, pay 3 to untap it. Metalworker, he's a phenom. Reveal any number of artifact cards in your hand. You get 2 colors for each one they reveal. So he's unbanned now, so why not? If I'm ever going to drop a turn 3 or a turn 4 Ulamog, it's because of Metalworker, most like. And then Astronaut's Altar. Sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. So all those man lands, you can pay 1 to wake them up. You can all feed them into this. So you can turn on 2 of them or 3 of them, and you can get double the mana for that 1 turn. Just kind of helps stretch you out. And there's again other ways of generating lots of little tokens, little dorks you can just kind of build up and then feed them all to the altar for your Eldrazi. Dreamstone Hedron adds 3, and then you can sack it for the cards. Again, you want to drop your big guy before you sack into things, but great card. Sculpting Stills, usually going to copy one of those better ramp pieces, but there's tons of artifacts on the board and plus other things in the deck you can copy. Sculpting Stills is all around. Expedition Map goes and finds you that great land. There's no one land. If I'm going on a Cloudpost path, I'll go get a Cloudpost card or a Vesuva or something. If I need a Scorched Ruins, if I have a good setup for that, I'll get Scorched Ruins. There's no one great card I always get with this. You kind of see what you have that game and what you need and what's going to be better for you. Walking Atlas. So here's a 1/1, taps put a land into play. So you have 45 lands, it's great to get them out early, get them out as much as you can. He's a good little ramp up card. Druidic Satchel, these are kind of my advantage engines going into this little section here. Pay 2 and reveal the top card of your library. If it's a creature, you get a 1/1 green sapling. If it's a non-creature, you gain 2 life, or non-creature, non-land, you gain 2 life, and if it's a land, you put it on the battlefield. So mainly you want it to be lands, and the 1/1s aren't bad. You can feed them to altar, you can clamp them up, you can block with them, they have utility for you. But you want to be hitting lands over and over and over. And there are ways to manipulate on top of the deck so that you can keep getting lands with this, because you got to get all the way up to 11. Staff of Domination combos off with Metalworker. You can go infinite and draw out decks and tap creatures and gain life and just go crazy. It's still not bad just to tap creatures kind of as an expensive icy manipulator, and you can draw cards off of it, so still has function. I had Karn combo in here, but I'm taking that out as all the new Eldrazi's are coming out. We don't want every colorless deck to be like a Karn deck, so but Staff is still in there for now. Prototype Portal. This card is so fun. When it comes into play, you imprint any artifact from your hand, and then you can pay its artifacts converted mana cost and put a token that's a copy of it onto the battlefield. So Darksteel Citadel is one of my favorite things to copy because it costs 0, so you just start tapping it and generating lands. But there's so many fun artifacts just to copy and just keep pumping them out again and again and again. You can do it with little mana ramps, soul rings, and things like that. That's just fine. But it's real fun when you got the more powerful artifacts, and we'll see some of those here coming up. Trading Post is the does it all card. Gains you life, makes little goats. You can turn artifacts from your graveyard to your hand as a big one. And then just sacking artifacts, drawing cards. So this just does what you need it to. Predator Flagship is my engine destroyer creatures. You can pay 2 to give a creature flying, which is not very unrelevant in this deck. I have very few flying or ways of getting into the air, so being able to jump my guys is good. And then 7, pretty much you can destroy any creature, or 5, you tap to destroy a creature with flying. So again and again, you can just take out creatures with this. Repeatable removal is good. Staff of Nin taps for damage and draws you an extra card. And then Planar Portal. This is my tutor for the deck, pretty much. Pay 6 and search for any card. So 12 to get it going, but I'm going up to 11 mana anyway, so it's totally within the range of doable. Planar Portal's great. If you get it really started, you're not going to lose that game. And then here's some of the top of the deck manipulation. Sensei's Divining Top, of course, is one of the better ones. Scroll Rack. Love Scroll Rack. I always just pitch my whole hand when I have it in the opening hand. Draw a new 5 and then kind of stack everything and make sure I got a nice smooth start going. But all the top of deck manipulation is going to matter, so Scorrock's a good one to do that with. And then Crystal Ball, a little more expensive, but you can pay 1 to scry 2. And then these cards all combo best with this card, Time Sifter. This is one of the weirdest cards Magic's maybe ever made. I've always kind of wanted to stuff it into some commander deck, and I'm like, well, if it's not going to be this deck, then there's really not going to be any deck for it. So Time Sifter is in my Eldrazi deck. And what this does is at the beginning of your upkeep, each player removes a top card of his library from the game. The player who removed the card with the highest converted mana cost takes an extra turn. If you tie, you just keep doing it until the tie is broken. So the idea is you get Soul Ring, or you get a Divining Top out there, you manipulate the top. And there's so much expensive artifacts, so many expensive Eldrazi. All of them are best removed from the game and turned into a Time Warp. So you're just going to try to hopefully have enough mana to cast Ulamog first, and then just Time Sifter the game away until you win. Or have some kind of big beater Eldrazi out there, so you can just keep taking turns and Time Sifting. Every once in a while I'll just throw it out there, even though I don't have any top deck manipulation, just to see how it goes. It just wackies the game up really bad. I've had crazy things happen where somebody else will copy the Time Sifter, or I could copy Time Sifter with Sculpting Still. Then you have 2 triggers, and then you have to keep track of whose turns was supposed to be on the stack. The last one that resolves is the one that gets the extra turn. So you can go down like this time tunnel with 2 Time Sifters, and then eventually if they get destroyed, you got to reverse the time order and take all those extra turns that didn't get taken. So there's some weird ththings that can happen with it. Really weird, wacky, fun card, Time Sifter. Phrixus of Pandemonium, this one's great, really great on turn 1, and especially with all the top deck manipulation, you can kind of decide what you want to have on top. But you tap it, exile the top card, each player exiles the top card of his library face down. You can sacrifice it and return all cards exiled back to the battlefield if they're permanents. So there's only 3 spells in here that aren't permanents. So mainly you're going to hit tons of land, tons of artifacts, and hopefully a few big Eldrazi. And when you have top deck manipulation, you can kind of make sure you got some really great stuff. But you play this out on turn 1. When you get to turn 7, you can crack it, and that's usually going to set you up for the next turn be able to drop Ulamog, because you're going to get enough lands to do it. But it's just a big pinata that you load up and open, and everybody gets a bunch of stuff. As long as you're doing it at the right time on the end step, you're usually going to come out ahead with this one. So this is a fun card. It's a fun card to portal, having multiples of these. Makes it interesting. Here's Lightning Greaves. So with Annihilator, you got to be swinging, and the best thing to do with that is with haste. So Lightning Greaves and Swiftfoot Boots both in here. The Hexproof and the Shroud is great. That way they don't have tuck effects, or they don't have bounce effects. That's one of the few ways you can get rid of Ulamog. So yeah, just booting them up right away and swinging gets the job done. Stoic Resonator, so you can copy any triggered ability. You can copy his Comes into Play, Destroy a Permanent. You can also copy Annihilator with this. Annihilator 8 is just devastating. So also other fun artifacts to copy, just an all-around wacky little artifact to use. A couple of clocks. We have Clock of Omens and Unwinding Clock. Clock of Omens is really great. This is going to turn any of those early mana ramp pieces just ridiculous. Once you drop it, you can tap 2 artifacts and tap one of the ones that taps for 3 or something like that. And so right away you get to Ulamog mana with this out pretty quick. Unwinding Clock, along the same lines, you untap your artifacts during each of the players' untap step. So this is better with the engine pieces. You're able to Druid Satchel or use Trading Post 3 times a turn, and that's just going to do good stuff for you. Skull Clamp is a great advantage, hard ways of drawing cards and colorless, so Skull Clamp is one of the best ways. Tons of little ways of making dorks and little creatures, so clamping them up is the best thing to do. Mind's Eye is another good way of loading back up your hand. You can pay 1 to draw a card when your opponent draws a card. And here's Monkey Cage. This is a weird one. So when a creature comes into play, you sacrifice Monkey Cage and put put a number of 2/2 green ape tokens equal to the creature's converted mana cost. So ideally, you want to be casting Ulamog or some other big Eldrazi. You sack this for 11 or 10 or something, and you get like an army of the damned monkeys. Only they come into play untapped, and they're green. Otherwise, if you're early in the game and you need some blockers, you can play it on turn 5 and see what your opponents drop, because it will trigger with your opponent's creatures too. And then you might get a 4 monkeys or something like that just to kind of get you by. But ideally, you want to have really ridiculous big mana and drop it the same turn you drop an Eldrazi, and then you get a whole bunch of monkeys. Oblivion Stone is in there, also really fun to put on a portal. You can put fate counters, you can blow up everything. It's an Oblivion Stone. Tangle Wire is one of the best setup cards I've come across for this. I mean, if I get Tangle Wire, I'm usually going to win this game, because It has fading of 4. Beginning of each player's upkeep, they tap an untapped artifact, creature, or land equal to number of fade counters on Tangle Wire. So normally by turn 3, I've got 1 or 2 little artifacts out, and then I can play Tangle Wire, and I'm just going to keep playing out ramp pieces for the next couple turns, and I can kind of do a little bit of tap shenanigans here and there with these kinds of cards. But mainly it's going to just freeze everybody out for at least 2 good turns. They're going to tap all of their stuff and not be able to cast anything. So in the early turns, this is really great. I love it on the portal. You can just make Tangle Wire tokens again and again and again, and that's just going to shut people off completely until you're ready to win. So this will get you to the later game, get you there safely, so you're able to take it over. Secure Invasion, one of those non-artifact spells in the deck, or just non-creature spells also. You put 5 colorless Eldrazi spawn tokens, and you can sack them, of course, for mana. So this will just get you from turn 7 to turn Ulamog. Also, little guys you can jump and block and equip up. Not of This World is awesome. You can counter target spell or ability that targets a permanent you control. And it costs 7 less if your creature is power 7 or greater. So if they do try to bounce Ulamog, and if you cast that, if you have to tap out to do it, and you have this in your hand though, it's pretty safe because you can still stop whatever one thing's coming at him, and then you can go Annihilator style. All is Dust. Sack all colored permanents everyone controls. So this won't hit you at all, of course, and it's just one-sided wipeout here. And Karn Liberated. He's a great way of just popping permanents, popping hands. Karn's a beast on an open board. Ugin, the Spirit Dragon. Same thing. Ugin's just going to wipe out the entire board, pretty much. Ugin's like an all is Dust. You exile the permanents, though, which is nice. And Mirror Turbine, kind of one of my advantage pieces. It jumps out mirror tokens. It's the start of my creature package here. You can tap 5 untap mirror and search for any mirror, so there is a little bit of a mirror package to it. But with this, you're just going to get lots of dorks, hopefully feed them to an altar or feed them to a clamp or something like that, or just get kind of mirror aggro if you need to. But here's the mirror package. Plague Mirror, he's awesome. He has Infect, so just having him back as a blocker is a little scarier than a normal 1/1. And then you can also, there's a way of pumping him up and going poison for the win, so he's not irrelevant that way either. I've tutored him up before to win that way. So Plague Mirror also adds a mana. Palladium Mirror adds 2 mana. So that's great at 3. Kind of a soul ring. Shimmer Mirror gives all your artifacts flash, so gives you another way of kind of getting there instant speed. And then Mirror Battlesphere is usually the mirror you're going to tutor up if you do get Mirror Turbine going. Enters the battlefield with 4 mirror of its own, and then you can tap all your untapped mirror you control to deal X damage, and he gets plus X plus O when he attacks. So you can go mirror aggro with this and just drop out a whole ton of guys and make life difficult. But mainly all the little tokens have no artifacts there to sack for other things is what this is for. Duplicate imprints a creature and exiles it. It becomes kind of like a copy of it. And then Steel Hellkite also hits hard. He's one of the only flying creatures I have. He gets Metalcraft Pump, and then, or not Metal Pump, but Metal Dragon, Fire Breathing, whatever. And then you can hit a creature, hit a player, and destroy X for converted mana cost if you put X into it. So it's a good way of getting rid of problem permanents, enchantments, things like that. Here's one of the new Eldrazi, Oblivion Sower. Haven't had a chance to use him very much, but he seems great. He exiles top 4 cards, and then you can put all lands from exile into the battlefield under your control. So if they have other lands exiled, you get them. So I gotta see other ways of breaking that open, but just another way of adding to your mana base, and he's a 6-drop, so not bad at all for an Eldrazi. And then another new one, Conduit of Ruin. When you cast him, you get a search for a creature card, converted mana cost 7 or greater, a colorless creature. So any Eldrazi or any of the big guys you want. And then your first creatures cost 2 less, so he adds 2 to your pool pretty much every turn, which is great. So he'll get you to Ulamog quicker. Thopter Assembly is over and over again, can make Thopter tokens for you. It bounces back during upkeep and you get 5 1/1 colorless Thopters. So this is great for altar. This is great for just pulling out those little guys and clamping them up and then doing it again. And then Eldrazi Conscription. This is the only enchant creature I got, but you can put this on your Infectors, and they get plus 10% trample and Annihilator, so you can hit them in 1. You can put on anyone, really, and they become a really bad thing to deal with. And it's Eldrazi, so it gets all the Eldrazi benefits, so it's nice. And then lastly, the big Eldrazi that I'm running right now, Spawnshire. He's probably going to go for some of the newer ones. But right now he's fun because you also have the ability of 20, you can cast any number of Eldrazi's from outside the game. So with the new set, there's a whole ton of Eldrazi. So you have kind of a B squad you can sink 20 into and pull out the whole backup team of Eldrazi's and go that route. So that's kind of why he's in there, just a weird alternate win con. Kozilek, the Butcher of Truth. When you cast him, you Annihilator. Oh, you got draw 4 cards, and he has Annihilator 4. So I almost went with him as a general, but he costs 10. I mean, being a little cheaper is nice, and he's able to kill in 2 hits, but he just doesn't have the indestructible. So that's why Ulamog got the nod over Kozilek. But he's definitely one of the ones you'll search up with Eye of Ugin to draw the cards and keep your hand full. And then It That Betrays. Annihilator 2, and when an opponent sacks a permanent, a non-token permanent, you return to the battlefield under your control. So it goes great with all the Annihilator. It's just fun to get him and another big boy out and then start beating and grabbing all their stuff. They're usually going to scoop before they give you anything, but still a fun way to play. Thanks for watching CMDR Decks. Please subscribe and favorite.